in Salford, listening to the Friday Weekly Sports Show. And for our guests that join us from around the world, yes, indeed, we have a global audience that tune in over the internet, 94.4 FM. This is Jimmy Petruzzi with Clifford, Tyrone. Clifford, how's your week been?
Formidable, Jim. Good to be here and good to have captured and clarified this great world of sport that never quits. The biggest issue coming into my mind for this week and on everyone's mind, especially in America, is Tyson Fury from the dead. One of those great moments in sport.
Oh, spectacular. And, you know, I think that not taking anything away from the evening, but obviously, you know, the decision to award the draw. And I think for me, it was utterly obvious that he did enough to win the fight above and beyond. And you got to wonder sometimes. And I think that that's sport these days, with all the technology we've got and everything that goes with it, we still see these decisions, Clifford, that don't go the way they should go. And, you know, if he doesn't get up in that last round, then fair enough. But he gets up and he shows some stuff. But for me, that's got to be one of the biggest sporting comebacks in the 21st century, to have been to the places that he's been. And testimony to him, I think that you saw a different side to him in the build-up, what he's been through, the trials and tribulations. And he talked about his mental health. He talked about some of the issues he's faced. And what a sporting comeback. And credit goes out to him.
And the way he's handled himself subsequently.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really put himself back in the very bosom of goodwill with all the boxing fans and the general public around the world. And single-handedly maybe ushered in, after a long hiatus, maybe another golden era of boxing, because I was not that interested in it. A lot of people, and I've heard figures of 15 years, 20 years, there's been no real thrill around the biggest, one of the greatest sports in the world, heavyweight boxing. I mean, it's fallen out of favour in people's consciousness. But this now, with three heavyweights, Wilder, Fury, and AJ, who I'm still not a big fan of, well, at least there's excitement back. And that was one of the great spectacles. That knocked out twice.
Yeah, I think AJ's a model professional. He sort of conducts himself professionally, and he's out there and he does a lot in the community. We can see that. He's very talented. Although you got to say he's gone a little bit quiet at the moment. He's sort of not had much to say. He's probably, I think, to be fair, I think most people would have been surprised in one sense that Tyson Fury, I think that the timescale between the two fights he had and now to have turned that performance on, I thought in his last fight it's going to take him a good year or so to get anywhere near where he was before. My word, he's talented, isn't he? He's got some talent. I think in any era, any generation, he's certainly someone that could mix it. We know, you may recall the generation, the Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, the Holyfield. You've got to say that Tyson Fury on that performance wouldn't be out of place in his peak in that generation. What do you think?
Fury, no one gave him a chance. 2 years away, mental health problems. And the fact that even if you're not familiar with the world of boxing, you could see he was carrying a tyre around his waist.
Yeah.
And even when he went down in that 12th round, there was no one in that whole stadium that thought he was getting up.
Yeah.
Especially Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let's send a message out. If he's listening this evening, wherever you are, Tyson, come on board the show. Get on board. Let's run an interview. Call in the show, Salford FM. We'd love to speak to you. And I think, you know, what you've done is a testimony to sport, but even outside sport. You've been brave enough to talk about your trials and tribulations and the mental health, and I think that takes some going, you know. And
he's shown again that the sport transcends it's discipline, and it affects everyone, and it has every emotion possible. And it's the greatest, most spontaneous form of theatre.
So get in touch, get on the webpage, the Friday, get on our Facebook page, the Friday Weekly Sports Show, and tell us your thoughts. We want to know your thoughts, and get on the Twitter account too, the Friday Weekly Sports Show, and let us know your thoughts, because tonight we have an action-packed show for you.
What's coming up, Jimmy?
We've got interviews. We've got an interview with the unsung hero. We're not going to go into too much detail just yet. Monson Sports Club, local athlete. We're going to do the Stunt Pegg report. It's going to tell us about all the things that are happening in the world of football and Bolton. I'm going to talk about the event I went to this week.
You spent some big sports stars.
Fantastic. And you know what strikes me about sports people in this area? They're so down to earth. They are so down to earth. And I think that for me, in my experience of working with athletes around the world and interviewing athletes and working with them on a one-to-one capacity, one thing you do get a sense of is the athletes in this part of the world, they are down to earth.
Tip what, Justin, because you've travelled extensively and met a lot of sports people from around the world. You're saying the Northwest.
I think
that's
so.
the most humble,
I think
brilliant
so.
people.
In my experience, it's amazing, and that sort of reflects.
Well, that's
as well.
definitive. That must. I mean, you've done a goodwill sample. There you go, folks.
I
just
think
as
so.
you thought.
I think so. Happy to spread the word and inspire young people and everything that goes with it. That's really important. I think that sports people, I wouldn't say it's an obligation, but it's certainly important, imperative that they find a way to connect with this younger generation. Because the thing is, really, at one point in everyone's career, they've all been there. They've all been in a situation themselves where they weren't the person they are today. And I think it's really important for sports people to sort of give a big in the world these days where sports become a business, because the inspiration some of these sports people give and the hope they give to young people. For me, some of the biggest role models I've had in my life have been sports people, and seeing what they do. We've all been there. I want you to email or get in touch on our Facebook page, the Salford Weekly Sports Show, or the Twitter page. Tell us your most inspirational moment in sport. What was an inspirational moment that inspired you? A time that an athlete did something outside the ordinary. Can you think of a time when an athlete did something outside the ordinary that really inspired you? Get in touch. Let us know. There's been plenty of moments in certainly my career as a spectator of sport as well that an athlete's really turned it on. And get in touch. Let us know.
Very happy now to introduce our local luminary that's been finally sung at the actual Unsung Hero Awards presentation from the BBC's won the regional awards. I'd like to introduce to the show Keith Brooks. Welcome, Keith.
Hi, thank you very much.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you. Unsung Hero of the Year. What does it feel like to be sung?
Well, friends of mine, most unkindly, have said that for more than half a century I've been singing at the top of my voice as to what a hero I am, but not many people were listening.
You've surprised me there.
More listening now.
You've surprised me, Keith. You struck me as a modest man from our dealings so far. But you don't get anywhere, do you, without shouting? We'll move on.
Exactly.
We'll move on to Monson Sports Club soon, because you're very at the heart of there, and you've been doing great work. But just let's just talk a little bit about the whole event and what was it like? Take us through the evening.
Which one?
The BBC, when you won the regional BBC Unsung Hero.
Well, it wasn't an evening. They presented it on a Saturday morning. The BBC came down, made a film, which has since been on the TV for 2.5 minutes, which gave us some wonderful exposure. And they came down and filmed on a Saturday morning when there were 4 junior football games at home and 1 junior lacrosse game, so loads of kids, which is what they like. And they presented me with the BBC award then.
And were you genuinely surprised?
Yes. Well, yes, I knew I was on the shortlist. But yes, I was, which was rather nice. But even better, it means I get to go with the gentleman who sponsored me, or recommended me, called Josh Lenehan, who's been cricket captain for 5 years, and he's still only 24, and is the general manager of the place. So we get to go as part of the award to the Genting Arena in Birmingham for the BBC Sports Personality of the Year Awards with Mr. Gary Lineker and co. over 2 days next weekend, which is rather nice.
It's a hell of an affair. Have you got a favourite for the Personality of the Year this year?
Well, no, because they've not announced them yet, and it's the first year. They usually announce 8 of them ahead of time, but this year they've changed it, and they're actually saying if there was a list of 8, then I would have. But I suppose the question is still valid, even without. I really don't know.
What about?
I suppose Lewis Hamilton jumps off the page again, although he's already won it. But
that's the exact name was in my head.
3 times.
Yeah, that was the exact name in my head. He must. I mean, now he's up there with 5 titles with the greats now, isn't he?
But, well, exactly. And Harry Kane would be another one.
That's right. With the summer we've had. It's been a great year for sport, really. For England, the youth teams in many disciplines, the cricket as well, has rejuvenated itself with the Sri Lanka tour.
Well, cricket, yeah, absolutely. And I watched almost every ball of that. And I've been to Sri Lanka. I've been on the Galle ground.
Have you been to that one of the most atmospheric?
Playing at the time.
That's one of they say it's the most beautiful ground in the world there.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
No.
But, I mean, Cape Town's rather nice. Newlands at Cape Town.
Yeah, that is a cracker.
Gaul is nice.
But let's speak about Munton, because you spent a good part of your life making it a great success. How would you explain it? It's a sports club, social club?
Both. It's a 5-sport club now. We play 5 sports, which are, namely, cricket, lacrosse, squash, tennis, and very recently, in the last 4 years, junior football. We've now got 8 junior football teams. We had 7 last year. We had 2 the year before that, and we had 1 the year before that. And that's been a major benefit, because a lot of those kids are playing cricket. We've now got 8 junior cricket teams as well. So, and we're also hoping that some of them will play lacrosse. We've got 2 junior lacrosse teams. So we've got, 18 junior teams.
Oh my God,
which is still spanning 3 sports there. But we also coach junior tennis and junior squash. We did have a junior squash team, but no longer. And we're trying to form a junior tennis team.
That's a serious operation.
It's a serious operation. Yeah, it is now.
And it's great, because we love sport here, and we realise the effects it can have on people, the well-being it can create, and to knit community together, especially in these times we hear about isolation and people are overweight.
Well, exactly.
You know, it's crucial.
Well, that's why the BBC love it. They think what's happened down there is virgin on miraculous. I mean, we've got 700 members. We've got 150 junior members. And those 150 junior members are only the ones that play on teams. Ones that don't play on teams, we don't charge anything. It's free till they're 18, and we charge them the regal sum of £20 a year to be able to play 5 sports.
Wow.
And he thinks rather good. Price of an inexpensive bottle of wine.
It's brilliant. Then you've got no excuse to get involved.
Yeah, and the sports subs, the sports senior subs are very cheap too, relatively.
Well, if it's the government, what about a government level? Have you found that there's funding, or they've been keen to promote and what you do?
No, we've spent just over 900,000 quid in the last 8 years.
Wow.
Or I have, pretty much raised it and spent it, which has transformed the place. And the breakdown of that would be something like, which is the most amazing thing, around £400,000 has been donated by well over 100 members.
Wow.
We've got grants off Viridor. We had 3 grants off Viridor, which are just short of 100,000 quid, and 4 big cricket matches against 11 ex-England internationals, which play under the auspices of the Professional Cricketers Association. That's raised us about 60 or 70,000 quid. And then the bar turns over about 300 grand a year. So we've spent 900,000 quid, and we owe relatively very little.
It's a great success
story. This day
story.
and age is amazing.
It is. Well, tell us what it was like when you first got there. Paint a picture of what you encountered on your first visit.
Well, on my first visit, I was in my mother's womb, and my first recollection of being alive is at Monton Sports Club. And in the BBC film that was on, they showed a picture of me that's on the wall at the Christmas party, aged 3, 67 years ago.
Wow.
My father was president, my uncle was president, they were both life members. So literally, I've been going for 70 years, literally. I'm 70 this year, been going 70 years.
You're a great advert for Munson.
Well, yeah.
You sound,
I'm obsessed.
Yeah. And
obsessed in the dictionary, that's what I am.
And you're passing down this lineage to your kids, are they taking over?
No, I've got no kids that play sport down there. It sounds very, very pompous, this, but I do it for the benefit of watching other people's children and grandchildren play sport, and there are hundreds of them.
Well, that's the greatest joy of all, isn't it? To create joy.
Well, absolutely.
Well,
and it gives me a massive buzz.
Anyone that's listening, how can they join this great organisation? You're in Eccles, aren't you?
I'm glad you asked that. I'm glad you asked that. Check out the website, first of all. Monton Sports Club, Monton.
Yep.
Come down.
And you'll be there you'll probably be there to greet
them. I'll buy them a pint then. I'll be there. Almost certainly.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have to stick to that now.
Well, if Salford listeners come down, say, "Hey, I heard you on Salford Radio, and I want to join the club." If they join, I'll buy them a pint or whatever.
Brilliant.
No problem at all.
I'm gonna come down myself, I think, and have a closer look at this place.
Oh, it's pretty good. You check the website out.
Hey, I know BBC beats to it, but I want on behalf of Salford City Radio also give you great praise for what you've done your whole life and the joy you've created in the community and everything you've done for the people here of Salford.
Right, well, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, and I hope it continues, and I'm sure it will.
Well, I think it will. We're just about, hopefully, we've got planning permission in to spend another 200,000 quid.
Oh my God,
it'll be even better then.
Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely coming down. This is it must be one of the best clubs in Salford, if not beyond.
Well, I go to a lot, and I don't know anything. I don't know one that's better. We debate this all the time.
Do you? Well,
but I'm biased.
Hey, well done again. We'll continue to get in touch later on in the year, find out how the BBC Awards went, and see the good work you're doing. But for now, thanks a lot for your time, Keith, and well done again.
Pleasure. Watch the BBC on the 16th next Sunday. You never know.
Will do. Give us a wave if you see the camera panning.
I will indeed.
All right, Keith. Keep up the good work.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Merry Christmas from everyone at Salford City Radio.
The place to be this festive season. Join us for some festive shows this Christmas.
94.4 FM.
Your city.
Your city.
Your city.
Your station.
Salford City Radio.
Welcome back. We have here just a little over 6:24. We are here, and we're the sound of Salford City Football Club as well, if you didn't know. We'll be telling you what's been going on there every week and getting a correspondent. If you're listening to Salford City, do get in touch as well anytime to give us an update. But for now, we can tell you the preview so far this week for Salford is 20 games unbeaten in the National Vanarama Conference League. 1 point behind second place. It's 3 promotions in a row, and there was a good article this week with Gary Neville. There was questions about the financial doping from other teams in the league. I think we can say that in this day and age, it's a bit academic. I mean, there's financial doping throughout football, and I don't think they've been too indulgent there. They've done it right. They've got a good manager. Rooney is doing great. First goal for Politic. They're playing Chesterfield, who they beat 3-2 earlier in the season, and their last win, the game was a 3-0 win against Havant and Waterloo. So it's serious, all guns blazing. If you ever wanted to go and visit a local football club, you can't do better living here in Salford with Salford City Football Club. We implore you to get down and watch the game, and soon we'll be getting match reports, and we're looking for a correspondent, actually. If you're a local and you've got time and you feel like you could be a budding football correspondent, get in touch at Sports Friday at Salford City Radio, and maybe you could become our first correspondent here of many as we try and get around all the great sports clubs. There's plenty, and on that note, again, we always implore you to try and get involved. Like you hear there, carefully Keith inspired you. It's one of the greatest drugs in the world, is it not, Jimmy, when you release endorphins?
It certainly is. And speaking of correspondence, we've got our very own Stunt Pegg, who's been out to Salford City Football Club in the past, and she's reported on the club before, but she gets round to all the big sporting events around the UK and the world, particularly follows Bolton, which is just up the road. Stunt Pegg, welcome to the show. How are you?
Very tense at the moment. The PFA have had to step in to help an unhappy camp at Wanderers. It's been it's not been a great week.
Is that a first, the FA getting involved at a club like that, Neve?
I think so. I've never seen this before. I didn't know that they were allowed to do that. I didn't know that, because it's to do with the pay dispute. They were promised yesterday morning. They haven't been paid for November yet. They were promised yesterday morning by Ken Anderson, and it's still not hit their accounts yet. And tomorrow we've got the league leaders, Norwich. So I mean, it doesn't look great. Yeah,
no, and it looks like it's mayhem from the outside looking in. And if Mr. Anderson's listening, you're welcome to speak to us on the show. We'd like to know more. And there's a hardcore following of Bolton fans in the area. They're only up the road. And I think that, we can consider them a neighbourhood club. And I think for me, Bolton is a proud club steeped in a lot of tradition. It's not good. Obviously, what's going on isn't great. And what about the performances on the field, Stunt Pegg? Is it affecting them on the field, or what are your thoughts?
I think so. I think it's been affecting them on the field right since it was first happening, because they got all their salaries in August, but September was where it started to go wrong. There were delays. And ever since then, you've noticed straight away the dip in form. And, we got a point against Wigan last week. And the fact that people are so happy with that, and it wasn't even that great a performance. You know, there was no desire in there, whereas, you know, we had half an hour to go, and it was 1-1. And you think, and Wigan were the ones who were they were the ones who scrimped out a bit in the end. It wasn't us trying to get a winner again. We're at home against Wigan. We should be the ones going for it, but I don't think they really wanted to.
I mean, even the greatest game in the world, and you think of us, we're all employees, and if you don't get paid, I don't care how much. I mean, I love the game, and if you're playing it, it's one of the biggest thrills in the world. But you can't not be paid. What's your take? What's actually going on behind the scenes? It's not being paid. For 2 months? Is he trying to sell? Is he think there's deception involved? I mean, what's happening?
We're being told, you know, all the time. We're being told in the last few months. We've been told several times that people have put bids in to buy the club, because that's what you're trying to do, sell it. He's trying to sell it for 30 million, though, and this is where I think I don't understand this, because 30 million is the same price that Wigan was sold for, and as much as you could suggest, you know, you ignore what's happening at the moment, you would say, yeah, okay, Bolton aren't worse than Wigan, but what's going on at the moment, yeah, because you're going to a much less stable club, and we don't own all of the assets, we don't own the hotel anymore, and things like that. So I think he's trying to sell it for too much.
But it's still a championship club with a great pedigree. You're only one step, as all investors want to be, away from the golden goose of the Premier League. It seems cheap to me, as crazy as that sounds.
This doesn't look like a club. This club is not a club that looks like they'll be in the Premier League anytime soon. This club is more likely to be in League Two in the next 2 years than they are in the Premier League.
Interesting insight there. Really interesting insight. I mean, I would sort of like to invite Mr. Anderson on the show to say his piece, really. I think that, you know, we certainly know football clubs aren't easy to run, and we sort of touched on Salford and the way things are running smooth at the moment, and the local team, or as local as you're going to get to this area, Salford now are sitting second, 1 point behind Leyton Orient. I think if they finish above Leyton Orient...
The fans would be on his side. The fans, you know, I reckon the fans would be on Ken Anderson's side if he came out and was honest with us.
Well, he's got the opportunity. We'd welcome him on the show. He can come in live. He can come in. We're happy to call him.
What he needs to do is show a little bit of a relationship with the fans, I think, at this stage, because he's stopped. He's not attending any of these interviews with Jack Dearden and Mark Isles, who are associated with the club, and he sort of doesn't. All the notes from the chairman that he puts online, they seem to be getting deleted because he's saying the wrong things. I think what needs to happen, right, is I think it should have happened at Wigan, but I think maybe on the Boxing Day fixture that's at home, I think something needs to happen where they either do like a bring a friend for a tenner, or you get a free mince pie or a free pint for the first few hundred that come in. He needs to do something to establish a bit of a relationship, because right now, I mean, there's an Anderson out banner just outside the ground. You know, there's so much animosity there. And I think it's more about the way he's going about it than not what he's actually doing, because, you know, you can't just not pay. And, you know, the bonus that Phil Parkinson was supposed to get for keeping us in the Championship last season hasn't been paid yet. And he never mentioned it once. And we were about to go in administration, but Eddie Davis, who was our former owner, he bailed us out by donating $5 million to get us out, literally an hour before we were about to go into administration. He passed away a few days later, and yet still, Ken Anderson didn't come out and say it was Eddie Davis who did it. He implied it was him who did it. It took some investigating from journalists to find out, actually, that wasn't you at all. That was a former owner. Loves the club.
I mean, you pretty much laid bare here that there's something seriously afoot. I mean, it sounds rotten. At what point is this going to completely be mutinous? And are you going to lose players, the actual front line, in the January transfer window?
Yeah, Phil Parkinson tried to insist that we won't be forced into sales in the January window, but it wasn't very enthusiastic.
Which players could go? I mean, just out of interest, which players do you think would be on the market and available? I mean, who would you say would attract interest from other clubs at the moment?
Well, I think, for example, Christian Deutsch, who we got from Forest Green, in January the option is that we either pay $1 million to keep him, or we send him back to his club, Forest Green Rovers, who I reckon he'll go back there, because he's really not got off to a great start with us, and I don't think he'll want to be sucked into this. And I'm not being funny, but £1 million on a League Two striker, we can't afford to do that anyway. I know Josh Vella, that there's a scare with him, and he's been at Bolton for a while now. and Preston North End have been looking at him, and Birmingham too have been looking at him. So
there is the danger, isn't there? There is the danger that what happens is that if they go down, they fall through the trapdoor and end up in League Two. We've seen that happen to the likes of Portsmouth before and other teams. And I mean, would that really be a bad thing, do you think, Stunt, Pegg, if Bolton did free fall and just found the way to rebuild the club? I mean, sometimes we all...
because if we get to that level, what's saying that we can't do, like Bury Fitness? I know they're not quite as big, but they're sucked into it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that we've seen that before. I mean, Leyton Orient at the moment, in the same division as Salford, and they're top of the league. And sometimes I think for me, it's a question of the club just rebuilding, and obviously the fans and the players and the staff don't want to go down. But on the other side of things, sometimes you've got to go backwards to go forwards, and to sort of flush the people out who aren't, according to all reports.
One of the worst counties to be in that situation. Sunderland got themselves in that situation.
Yeah, no, there's no easy. It's not a nice road to be on, for sure. But we've seen that before in football, where teams have sort of, Wigan fell through the trapdoor, and
Manchester City did.
Yeah, well, exactly, Man City, and
they got a generous benefactor, and
I mean that obviously helped. But even without the benefactor, they made their way up to the Premier League.
To the top.
Yeah, they got to the Premier League. Yeah. We saw that with the Man City, where they went on free fall. So I think in one respect, it's about keeping positive, irrespective of the situation, but obviously addressing any core issues. And there obviously are issues, and if there are issues around payment, which we don't know for sure on our part, but we certainly welcome anyone from Bolton to come on, and certainly when you go to the game tomorrow, Stunt, Pegg, do feel free to invite anyone who wants to tell us a bit more about Bolton's cause, because that's what we're all about putting the fans in touch with the clubs, because we know that the clubs have sort of dissociated themselves to the point from the fans, and without the fans, let's face it, the game isn't anything. It's all about the fans. You tell any player out there what's it like playing without fans. The game isn't anything without the fans. And I think for me...
a club like Bolton really isn't anything.
Sorry, something?
Ken Anderson has come out and blamed, because the average attendance has dropped by 2,000 over the last sort of 6-7 months. Yeah. And he's blaming the fans for that.
Oh my God, this guy is toxic, isn't he?
Yeah, well, he's charging £35 for adults to go and watch it. I don't understand how he expects.
He's like a poor man's Glazers, isn't he? He's a poor man's Glazers, like poor man's Man United. It's exactly what's going on.
I don't think he understands football.
Does this set up? Is this set up for a beautiful reunification of Bolton Wanderers and Sam Allardyce?
Oh, I mean, if I hear one more person say still lives in Bolton, and therefore there might be a chance, I'm going to scream. I'd love to have him.
Yeah. No, I think for me that ship has sailed. I mean, Big Sam, he made his way to the top of the game. There's no higher accolade than managing your country, and that sort of obviously fell through for one reason or the other. But that said and done, I think that for me, it's about looking forward, at least in the way I see the world. But, football's a funny game, and funny things happen in football. And a week in the game of football is a long time. And one thing's for sure, Stunt, Pegg, a win tomorrow, a win next week, and all these sort of things gets blown over a little bit. I think for me, the time to strike at a football club is when you're doing well. Too often in football, teams wait until things aren't going well, is when they start looking at addressing core issues. I think the time to sort of start doing work is when things are going well, and the time for me to really start rebuilding was when they survive. But I don't know. From the outside looking in, I don't know what's going on, but we do welcome anyone to come on board the show and speak to us. Have a great game tomorrow, Stunt, Pegg. Enjoy the game, and we look forward to having you back on the show next week with more on the Bolton Report.
Thank you for having me.
Well, a good insight there. Not a happy one, but quite a brutal account of what's happening at Bolton. It is bleak. That is probably as bleak as anyone watching that club can remember.
Yeah, football's an emotional game. Sport carries a lot of emotion, and I think for me, fans are steeped into the tradition of the game, and we're seeing more and more the clubs dissociating themselves to a point from the fans, and that's what it means to the fans. We know what it means to the fans, and I think sometimes that might go amiss with some of the people who run the clubs, because they sort of, sit in the ivory tower and they don't always get a feel for what it's like to be a generational fan of a team. It's in the DNA.
I'd say that it's a bigger cataclysmic event than that. Is just as it's become a business, they don't care. A football club is a parish. It lends warmth to the community, and I still go back to Bobby Robson and the greats, managers of yesteryear, to Matt Busby. It's entertainment. It's a very important social communion, and to be absolutely wholesalely transformed into a business. This is at the heart of many clubs in many countries. Well, actually, Germany is the opposite model, but many leagues here in England. As soon as it's become a business, and look at the opposite. If it's done well, look at what happened at Leicester. An owner that understood the importance of a club to its community.
Yeah, I think so, and I think for me that's sort of one thing in that's once in a million years, so to speak. I don't think we're going to see the likes of that happen for a long time, if ever again. So.
Not the way the world's going. Sport
precisely.
And it's all about.
Precisely. I mean, we know that Nottingham Forest did some tremendous feats in the 70s to sort of go on and win the European Cup, and Clough there was a phenomenal achievement. Ranieri's achievement for me was as big as any achievement in domestic sport I've ever seen. It really was, and to think that he managed to finish on top of a league with the likes of Chelsea, City, the money they've thrown at players,
money talks more
Man
every
United,
year.
Arsenal. But the thing is,
so that's
Clifford, but the irony behind that is, what happened the following year? What happened the following year to the manager?
That's the fascinating cycle, isn't it?
There you
That's
go.
the fascinating
He didn't even get the chance to see the Champions League out.
I don't know.
Where are we going with things? It's like, okay.
But that was maybe a classic example of...
on the bus, off the bus. Disposability.
Get used to winning, that's it. You got like you just said 5 minutes ago, we got to stay winning, and if you're winning, that's when you sort it out.
Exactly.
So that's what they did. They got rid of him.
Yeah, don't dine on yesterday, so to speak. Well, they got rid of him when they're getting beat.
There's no room for sentiment in it.
Yeah,
We have to remember, for managers, it's one of the most brutal environments to ply your trade, any trade in the world, so publicly, and your days, if not, not even a week away from trouble in football now.
Let's be under no illusions. To be a manager is a prestigious job, and it's a tremendous job, and certainly in top flight football they're paid financially in that respect. So they lose their job. I think it was the Mourinho quote where at one point he said that he won't be travelling on a bus or something along them lines if he gets the sack years back. And that's the fact of the matter. In the day, they're not sweating over a cup of coffee.
Actually, you just reminded me that this may be all conversely the only industry where you get paid to fail and paid gloriously.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You can take a club down and then you got 3 or 4 clubs queuing up and that sort of stuff. And then you got managers going on these shows, these reality TV shows. What's all that about?
That's a modern day.
What's all that about? A football manager on a reality TV show.
You don't like that?
Oh, I'm not sure about that, mate.
He's a national treasure, though. He's a national treasure.
Yeah, could you imagine?
But he's retired from football, pretty much.
Could you imagine a Paisley or a
Alf Ramsey?
I don't know. Tell us your thoughts. What do you think? Should a football manager be on a reality TV show? Not that I watch that reality TV. Not that I've got time for any of that.
He wanted out, I heard this morning. He'd done enough. He missed his...
Well, he's missing his mansion.
He's missing the most expensive retail in England.
Over in Bournemouth, that exclusive area in Bournemouth.
Well, what's your views? We must just quickly touch on the great, grand, ongoing opera of Manchester United. And today, Mourinho's agent... Well, they started the day with news that he's gone, and they're gonna pay 40 million to get Pochettino, and then it never stops giving this story. The Manchester United now, not for the right reasons. So a few hours later, the manager of Mourinho, the agent of Mourinho, comes out. And he said, he didn't just say that he's staying. He said that Manchester United are very happy with him. I mean, what's happening there?
Yeah, no, I can imagine that they're
not very happy.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought they're very happy. With him.
So that's a unilateral comment. They've not spoken to the Glazers.
What I would say, I think
Mendes.
by all reports, by all accounts, what I would say personally is that there's a lot of people at that club that have got to take a good look at themselves to sort of pass the buck on one person for the underachievements that have been happening over a few years now. There are people at that club that are getting away with underperforming at every level. I mean, come on, let's face it.
I still say you're dictated by your manager. Have you ever had I've had one bad manager once, and I ruined a job that I loved within 3 days.
It doesn't help. But on the other side of things, they talk about Pochettino. What has Pochettino won? What's he done in the game? No disrespect to him. He's obviously a great manager, and he's up and coming, and he's done really well with Southampton and Tottenham, and he's brought on all of the young England players. But what has he done in the game to earn that right to go to the biggest or one of the biggest clubs in the world? What's he going to do any different?
Because it's a modern owner's dream. He coaches. There's suggestions Mourinho can't coach, and which is a fundamental requirement of the job. I'd say he can knit together a team. He can get 11 different individuals.
Mourinho can always say, "Can I see your trophy cabinet, please?" And comparatively to Mourinho's, irrespective of what anyone says, I mean...
But even in the press today, he's still saying, I did this, I've done that, I've done that.
I mean, to be fair to him, he has. There's nothing, not taking that away from him, but obviously, in the end of the day, I think that's not endearing to the fans, for sure, definitely. But
it's
his
indicative of his character.
Yeah, the record speaks for itself.
The world revolves around him.
I don't think, personally, in my opinion, there's any other manager in the world at the moment that, under the same circumstances at United, could get much better results. I really don't.
There's no managers that could do any worse. You can't get worse than 8th with that squad.
Well, careful what you wish for.
Actually, just finally on that note, and also it's relevant to any football club where you're listening, it could be your local Sunday club. Why do fans not complain? Why are none of the Manchester United not complaining, but some of them are praising him? And same probably at Bolton. I don't know the situation there, but why are fans just so placidly accepting? Because it is unravelling at Manchester United.
Now we're going into the psychology of things. Here we go. Yeah, I think there's a number of factors. I think some people generally buy into him. I think some people generally think that he's got a great track record. Some people are aware of the club and a number of aspects of the club. And
do we just live in a more apathetic time?
I mean, I think it's multifactorial. I think that people have got their reasons for various supporting.
I'd love to hear on that as well. If you think why the people don't protest so, because some clubs do, and then I mean, the way I see it, this is the way I see it from my perspective, is that you've got Chelsea, you've got a lot of investment, you've got the likes of, say, City, that's got incredible investment, you've got Arsenal, Liverpool, you've got all these teams with loads of investment as well, that spent money as well, Tottenham too. I don't think any club's got a divine right anymore to be anywhere, and I think you can't dine on yesterday, that's for sure. So we'll take a short break and we'll talk more about some local athletes.
This is your award-winning community radio station, Salford City Radio.
So speaking of athletes, this week I had an opportunity to interview a couple of really inspiring local athletes. One is a triathlete who I hope to get on the show at some point, who will definitely come on the show at some point, Rihanna Parkinson, a truly inspirational athlete as a person as well. And she talked about how she transformed her sporting life around. She went from playing football to being released or giving it up, and just basically, in her own words, she said that she was a couch potato in her own words. And she talked about how she transformed herself into being and competing in the Triathlon World Championships. And what an amazing inspirational story to think that these athletes, they get up every morning and give 100% and really dedicate themselves to the cause and speak about sport with true passion. And the other one as well, Stacey Copeland, who became the first ever British female boxer to win a Commonwealth title. She defeated Mapuli Negbuni in Zimbabwe, become the first ever British female to win a Commonwealth title, and she was an inspiration as well. And these are local athletes not too far away from here, making a ripple in world sport. And we are inundated in this area with tremendous athletes, and I think for them to be ambassadors for a positive cause and looking to be role models for young athletes aspiring. In my conversation with Rihanna, I asked her what inspired her, and she talked about the 2012 games and seeing some of the achievements from Jessica Ennis and the Brownlee brothers, and Stacey Copeland talked about her inspiration, her granddad, her dad was a boxer as well, and she's got in the ring herself and achieved greatness. And it goes to show that there's that embryonic spark that can ignite an athlete. And I want you to email us and let us know if there's anyone out there that, for you, was able to create a spark and inspire you to take up sport or even watch sport. Yourself, Clifford, do you have any moments that you can remember in the sporting world, any sort of moments? I mean, growing up, I'm sure you would have been inundated by some great sports people from a world stage. Anyone that sort of did it for you?
What, the professionals?
Yeah, I mean...
I'll tell you who did impress me at my school was Ian Botham's son.
Yeah, okay.
And from a young age, he played for the first team at cricket at 14. It had never been done. And he did go on to have a professional rugby career. And his approach to the game was very, very distinct and applied. A lot of these people that do well, they're driven by failure, aren't they? When we fail, we get despondent. But what comes through for the people that get to the top is they use that. They learn how to channel that as a spur, as a source of energy.
Great shout. Yeah, I think so too. I think that's really important. That for me, it's tough, isn't it? And we saw the fortitude of the likes of David Beckham after the '98 World Cup, where he'd basically been, we know what happened. The press, the fans, and for him to show that fortitude to come back bigger and stronger and win the fans over and get on with it, it shows what a tough person he is mentally.
And Ferguson would have helped foster that. I mean, we can all do with a good mentor or a friend that, that can encourage you. But going back to my first sporting kind of experience that touched me as a 10-year-old, I was watching 1986 World Cup. I first saw Maradona, and I knew that was the best goal I was ever going to see in my life. But
incredible
the
goal,
Olympics before that, staying awake through the night as a 7-year-old boy in Sale, and seeing Daley Thompson and wondering what he's doing, knowing there was some greatness about him, all these different sports. And that inspired me greatly. And I would, you don't have to be a professional sports player. If anything, that's our core here of our essence on Sports Friday is to implore you within our local parish of Salford, but wherever you're listening around the world, to just try and take up any kind of activity. It can be an individual pursuit, but I'm going to be biased and say team pursuit there's such richness and rewards in it, to be greater than the sum of your parts and to test yourself in a kind of way that's not that common nowadays in this modern day age of where you can be scared. If you've got someone running at you at rugby and you've got to tackle them, you're going to know what fear is and you're going to find out something about yourself. And there's so much to benefit. Of course, you can go for the ultimate drug of endorphin if you will just raise your heartbeat for more than 20-30 minutes. It could be a fast stroll. And the feeling you get afterwards is the greatest drug in the world. And you can start local. We heard tonight from Muntham Sports Club. They've got 8 different sports. And the social element in this age of isolation.
Exactly. No, and I think for me, you mentioned Daley Thompson. What an athlete he was. What a tremendous athlete. How many people did he inspire to greatness? Now, we've got the sports personality. I mean, what about the likes of, we talked about boxing before, Tyson Fury. What are the chances of him sports personality of the year?
It'd be interesting if they give it him.
That's the thing, isn't it?
People have forgotten now that when he came out of the Klitschko fight, of course he got lauded for what he did, but people questioned it. The sporting element, was he too old? But
will the establishment give him? Wouldn't it be a turn up? And he thoroughly deserves to be in the running, and he's got a good shout, that's for sure.
Is that the biggest turnaround you can think of at the top of your head? Because remember when he finished, he came out with a lot of racist, a lot of sexist, a lot of comments. He fell right to the bottom, as far as you could probably go as a human mentally, and he came out with comments that were very divisive, and his stock was low, personally, publicly. And to culminate 2 years later of getting up in the canvas with 2 minutes to go in the 12th round still, no one gave him a chance in that 12th round.
Yeah, I'm for sure after that fight.
They've got to give him.
After that fight,
Hamilton, of course, he's got 5 titles now.
Definitely.
But as just on a human level, the human condition, and he came out immediately afterwards and talked about this, which must have inspired a lot of people that feel helpless. We'll have a quick think. If you can think who should rival him, let us know.
I think the odds are certainly going to be slashed. I think one thing's for sure, had he have been given the decision he should have been given, at least in my opinion and many other people's opinion, and won the fight, he would have been with a huge chance. But I think even more so, you know what struck me as well? I watched the interview after the fight, and what was really, really, really showed a lot of maturity and was really impressive. He could have easily have played the victim not being given that decision, but he talked about how he was going to get on with it. That's what happens in the fighting world. And this is sort of putting my spin on things. But he talked about how he put his life into perspective. He really talked about how you put sport, after what he'd been through, it puts sport into context. Because as much as we love sport, and there's probably there's no two more passionate people about sport than Clifford, Tyrone, and myself, Jimmy Petruzzi. We love sport, we live and breathe it, but also there is a sense of perspective out there, especially this time of year as well. There's people out there who are doing it tough, and it's not easy. You know, people around the world being laid off from work and Christmas time. It's not an easy time of year. And sometimes we sort of look to these athletes to bring us some sort of hope, some inspiration, to give us some words, some pearls of wisdom coming from a great athlete, just to sort of cling on to something. And sometimes when, you know, if nothing else, you sort of gain inspiration and think, well, if they can do that, then there is hope. I can do it. I can turn my life around. I can, against all adversity, if a guy can go through what he'd been through, and many people go through, and turn things around, how inspirational that. And you make the point there, you don't need to be a world champion. I think you can be a champion in your own domain, just getting out there and just enjoying it and being the best you can be.
And the turnaround from suicidal, by all reports, to such a calm self-possession that he had, and immediately after the fight was even more poignant, and the lucidness and the togetherness and the thought for anyone but himself.
Yeah,
it's remarkable. It was remarkable. The whole thing was remarkable.
I don't want to be or come across as being cynical in any way. I'm sure a lot of it came from the heart. Do you think that PR had anything to do with it? Clifford, what's your thoughts? No. I don't think so. I think there are some rumblings. There's been some rumblings. We've got to sort of get that
What, you mean in his behaviour or the result?
Yeah, no, just generally his demeanour, the change in his persona. I generally think, reading between the lines, watching the interviews, he's coming from the heart. I think he's at a moment, an epiphany, where he's at this big realisation, you know what, I am a great athlete.
That's why he should win. He was sincere, and that's why he should be celebrated, because he's shown you the power of going from self-serving, self-obsessed, self, and being angry with the world, blaming everyone else, outsourcing responsibility, to what can happen if you get a hold of yourself. And you know what excites me is next time he fights Wilder, if he does get that fight before AJ, he is going to be a lot more leaner and a lot more together than he was this time around.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think for me, it's one of them really. I think sometimes you got to take the opportunity when you get it, and sport's a funny industry, and I think
especially boxing.
Yeah, I mean, Wilder can
be hero or zero in
one thing Wilder can do, he can hit pretty hard. That we know for sure. And you know, boxers have talked about how he's one of the hardest hitting in the game. And for me, I was pleasantly surprised that if you got past 7-8 rounds, I generally thought I'll hold my hands up. I'm not one of the sort of people.
He was
not
in good shape, really.
Yeah, I'll hold my hands up and say I generally thought that Wilder was going to knock him out in 7 or 8 tops. Hold my hands up, albeit you got a lot of people coming out.
And that's mental fortitude.
Yeah, and that sort of shows. He sort of proved people like me wrong. Not that I know about boxing as much as some people do, but you know, you get them in every sport, don't you? The people who they sort of jump the bandwagon. You sing when you're winning type thing. And these are the people that, you know, for me, and it happens in football too, as you well know, when things are going well, they're out there. When things aren't going well. So I want you to think about the club you support. Get behind your club, because the players need the fans.
Choose a local club. Everyone should choose a local club this weekend. Get out there. Just quickly, though, just say boxing-wise, that's one of the greatest disciplines. You want to make yourself better? If you're here listening tonight, you're inspired to do something, get down to your local boxing club. And also at Salford City Football Club, our great local team here, they're also doing a mental health awareness campaign, which is very important for male mental health awareness, and also jumpers for goalposts. So if you've got any old clothes, take them down to Salford City Football Club, and they're being given out to the homeless this Christmas. So it's great to see that they do care, to see a football team that is sincerely cares about the community.
They do. I mean, and I think for me, a lot of the stuff that footballers do doesn't get reported in a positive note. Certainly, I think that a lot of the good work that footballers do, they go out there, they go into hospitals, and they do a lot of stuff that doesn't get reported and doesn't make the headlines. And we saw the front page, which we won't go into, the Arsenal team, the front page wasn't the best of headlines for them, and really, you know, we probably expect a little bit more from footballers in one respect, but in saying that, you put a foot wrong and it's everywhere. And I'm not sort of condoning behaviour of any sort. But what I'm saying is that it'd be nice to every now and again put out there some of the good things that footballers do, performers do across the performers across every sport, not just in football as well.
Yeah.
Because there are people out there that do stuff that, performers in athletics, performers in basketball, performers in many other sports that do a lot of stuff. And next week we're going to have, all being well, Chris Castor from Salford on the show, and he can tell us a bit more about what's going on at the club going forward.
Also, we must mention they're trying to also help the stigma surrounding men's mental health. As we know, men traditionally have been encouraged not to show their emotions.